that will that will be the year of the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris in March. While preparing this webinar on the role of PDBs on nutrition and on existing guidelines, scores, assessment tools, or reporting tools, we noticed that concerning nutrition, there were very few tools available in comparison with the other topics of our previous webinars. I mean, for example, on climate or agroecology. Sometimes some of the tools were very detailed or very specific. In our discussion with our PDB members, we also noticed that not all agri-PDB from our network have a mandate on nutrition, and a minority of them have developed a nutrition strategy. The purpose of this webinar is to participate to the debate on how to integrate nutrition objectives in an agricultural portfolio. Bonjour à tous pour les auditeurs francophones. Donc ce webinaire sera en anglais, nous sommes désolés, mais nous avons traduit les présentations en français et nous vous enverrons un lien le plus vite possible vers les présentations en anglais. Alejandro, would you like to say the same in Spanish?
Yes, thank you, David. Sorry, sí, para todos los miembros que están conectándose de bancos hispanohablantes, también vamos a compartir la presentación en español, traducida a español, después de la sesión. Over to you.
Gracias, Alessandro. The debate will be animated by Yuehu, who will share with you some poll questions during the webinar. It will be animated also by Mohamed Ali Trabelsi and by Alejandro Enciso. They will collect your questions in the chat. The audience of our webinars are mainly project managers for public development banks, and we thank you all for your active participation. We will prioritize at the end during the Q&A the question from the PDBs, and all the team is available for follow-up meetings with the banks who would like to build nutrition-sensitive projects in agriculture. I will pass the floor to Aurore Lambert from AFD. AFD is co-leading the Agri-PDB platform with IFAD.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm the focal point for nutrition for the French Development Agency. We're very happy to participate in this first webinar on nutrition-sensitive food systems project. For France, it's a perfect timing for this webinar, since we are going to receive the Nutrition for Growth Summit at the end of March. It's an event that has as an objective to put nutrition at the heart of the global development agenda. The previous session was in Tokyo in 2021, and the pledge was $27 billion. And the next session will be in Paris in March 27 and 28. And the French ambassador for nutrition has an ambition to highlight the role of the Public Development Bank and a system to scale up investment for nutrition. That's why this webinar is very important for us. And we would also like to take the opportunity of this moment to identify public development banks who would like to share ideas, challenges, methodologies, best practices during either the Cape Town Summit at the end of February or the N4G Summit at the end of March. So if you're interested, you can contact either me or Thierry, and we'd be very happy to discuss with you and how to highlight your experience. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So before we really begin our session, let's have a quick investigation about how much you know about nutrition, and does the organization currently incorporate nutrition as is part of the investment? Please take the choices that are suitable for you in the poll question now. Thank you. Okay, we'll wait for another 20 seconds.
Okay, now as you can see, many of the participants in the organization, they are currently incorporating nutrition objectives into their investments. And following, we will have the opportunity to listen from a developing bank, which is NABARD. Thank you to the NABARD team again for being here. And now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Bhavani Shankar, which is the Chief General Manager. Doctor, please, over to you. And you let me know when you see.
Yeah. Good afternoon and good evening. This is Bhavani Shankar from NABARD, Mumbai. My apologies that I have some issue with the video. I request the team to share my screen, share the presentation. Yeah, you can just go ahead. Just before going into the presentation per se, a brief intro about NABARD. NABARD is considered as the developmental financial institution of India, headquarters at Mumbai, Maharashtra of India. We, as a developmental financial institution, we undertake certain specific functions which are related to supervision of rural financial institutions, which are in the space of agri and rural development, credit functions that we finance the state governments and government of India for infrastructure development, then developmental functions and also policy advocacy to governments. So it is in the area of developmental functions and policy advocacy we figure in. My particular department figures in. We work with several partners at the ground level, almost more than 3,000 civil society organizations we work with. We also work with self-help groups. We also work with farmer producer organizations and so on. Can you move on, please? Yeah. On the developmental programs per se, we have some flagship programs which are basically natural resource management programs. The most important and the largest of these programs include watershed development and also sustainable livelihoods for the tribal communities. I mean, the numbers you can see here, this presentation can as well be shared. To save on the time, I am skipping on the numbers, please. Please go ahead. Yeah, if you look at the Indian agriculture, these are the main concerns. The growing population and as a and this is manifested in producing more food to meet the demand, and it is estimated that 40 million tons is required from 2030, additional 40 million. It is roughly now around 340 350 million tons. We need to produce more, and this is at the backdrop of high levels of land degradation we notice in the country. The extent is almost 100 million hectares of the 300 odd million hectares of geographical area. And the issue is more complicated with the climate change contributions. I mean, the climate change is creating more challenges at the ground level. Next, please. Yeah. Now, connecting to the degraded lands, we are primarily working in the rain-fed areas. And why rain-fed areas and the food and nutrition security is more important? The reasons being 60% of Indian farmers function in the rain-fed areas, and 50% of the cultivated area falls under rain-fed. So they are very important, and these 50% or 60% of Indian farmers, because of their contribution to food grain production, become very critical for food security as well as nutrition security. On the right hand, this is the importance of working in the rain-fed areas. On the right hand side, if you see, these are the issues. These are the issues that prompt us, that warrant our attention as a developmental financial institution to invest into natural resource management projects, which to ensure the security, food security as well as nutrition security. At a macro level, at the present stage, India is considered as self-sufficient for in food security, but Indian agriculture is so diverse that if you look into each of the states, the food security levels change. Especially the nutrition security also is widely diversified. Okay, now the question that we wanted to address through some of our programs is how can we address these interrelated issues to ensure the basic needs of food and nutrition security. And one of the approaches that we have adopted is an integrated watershed development based on climate vulnerability assessment, because these rainfed areas are highly vulnerable for climate risks. Now, one of the programs that we are implementing is called KFW Soil Program, which is a part of One World No Hunger initiative by government of Germany through KFW. KFW, like in India, how NABARD is, KFW, all of you must be aware that it's a developmental financial institution in Germany. The purpose of this program is rehabilitation and regeneration of the degraded soils, which I have quoted as one third of the geographical area. We intend to take up some projects in some states of India, so that we demonstrate the effectiveness of this approach in addressing the food and nutritional security. And the goal of this program, as you see on the right hand side, is efficient use of natural resources, reducing the vulnerability of climate change, and increasing the productivity of the farms. And we have about 226 projects, which are in about 800 odd project locations. Please go ahead. Next slide, please. This is an outline. This is an outline. This is a 9-year-old program which is implemented in 3 phases in different states. We have totally 226 projects, of which the last phase is ongoing, and that is also expected to complete in about 6 months' time. Next, please. This I would like to spend a little time on this particular slide on more specific to the approach we adopt. Whenever we go into a project area, the first thing we do is there are certain indices, acceptable indices, which are being used in India, developed by technology institutions, which is called a composite index, which is also called as RAPI index, based on which we identify the most vulnerable areas in the country. Then we take the support of technology agencies or technology institutes to study the climate vulnerability, to make an assessment of the climate vulnerability in these regions. They will do all the mapping, they will take the climate parameters, they will make some projections, etc., etc., and then they come up with the suitable interventions that can be taken up in these particular project areas. Now, on the right hand side, you see something called the bottom up approach. While the technology or the scientists would give the interventions that are suitable, we also look, all of us appreciate the fact that unless the community owns up these interventions, these projects cannot be sustainable. And therefore, we undertake something called participatory rural appraisal of these areas, where the extensive interactions are held with the communities to validate what the science says, so that there is an element of ownership in the community that these particular set of interventions are being taken up in the interest of the community, and also to ensure their nutritional security. So this is the fundamental aspect, or I can say a cardinal principle in our program implementation. Next, please. Yeah, these are the program components broadly, very, very broadly. These are the program components in each of in the projects. Typically, our project size, we call it as a micro watershed, which is about 1,000 hectares, and the program period is about 4 years or 5 years. In each of the project, we also have something called capacity building phase, where we test whether the community gels well with the project implementers, which are the civil society organizations.
We don't hear you anymore. Dr. Bhavani, are you still connected? Yes, you are still connected, but we don't hear you. Yes, please go ahead. We have a connection problem. Dr. Bhavani, if you don't hear us, maybe we will go back to your presentation later. And Dr. Bhavani, Nora, could you please go ahead with...
I think I am back.
You're back.
Is
Yes.
my voice audible?
Yes,
Yes.
we can
Sorry.
hear you. Yes.
Uh, 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 these are the soil water conservation measures. And the other, can I continue? Is my voice audible now?
Please try again. The connection was not good.
Is it all right now?
Yes. Yes. Please continue. We are. Please, if you could go to the end to your presentation in 1 minute.
Yes. Can you move on? See, there are different sets of interventions which are related to soil health, promoting of sustainable NRM, and also measures to enable the community to adopt to the climate risk. Next, please. This is a monitoring mechanism that we have using remote sensing technology. Next, please. Next, please. To see you some pictures which will clearly demonstrate the effectiveness of these interventions. Next, please. Can you go ahead? Move ahead. Yeah, you can just stop here. This would be the last. Please, previous slide, please. Previous. Yeah, please kindly hold this for a moment. So you can see the set of interventions that are being taken up. Uh, taken up in these projects, which are directly connected to food and nutritional security. Now you see nutrition gardens or kitchen gardens. You also see some technologies like systemic SRI of paddy. You also see orchard cultivation. You also see bio input resource manufacture on the bottom of the page, and these are, and all, you also see a picture of millet cultivation in these projects. So all these would address the nutritional requirements or the food security requirements of the.
I'm sorry, Dr. Bhavani, we lost you again, and the connection is very bad. So we will share the
Yes. If you have seen this slide, my presentation is done. My
Okay.
presentation is done with this slide.
So we will share the presentation with
I mean, this
everyone.
gives a
I'm terribly sorry for everybody, but the connection was very bad at the end. So we will now go to Nora Praher. And sorry, Nora, we are already late in the agenda.
No worries at all. Yeah, technology is the one thing we can't control oftentimes. Thanks, Thierry, for having me. I'm just getting up my presentation. Please let me know once it's visible.
As you know.
Good, perfect.
Yes.
And so, hello everyone, and thanks for having me today. I am speaking to WFP's perspective. Many will know WFP as the largest humanitarian organization with a big focus, obviously, on our emergency response. And I wanted to start off with a glimpse of our actually operational requirements from our global outlook for the year 2025 to show that indeed, like around about 75% of our operational requirements will go towards or will stem from emergency response in South Sudan, Haiti, and others. However, there's a large proportion as well that amounts to roughly 1/4, and that's still over $4 billion that is targeted towards more international development interventions. And across all those three pillars, WFP is actually the largest provider of food and nutrition assistance worldwide. Our recently published nutrition strategy, which started in 2024 and will run until 2030, has three strategic pillars. On the one hand, it focuses on reducing malnutrition in emergencies. Secondly, it's promoting healthy diets for vulnerable populations. And lastly, it's to strengthen national nutrition systems. And this is also where there would be great overlap with the webinar today and with all of you present here today. We are also actively working towards the Nutrition for Growth Summit that will happen in Paris. And as mentioned previously, hope for many engagement of different partners. Which leads me to the point of WFP obviously is renowned for contributing to SDG number 2, Zero Hunger. However, the second SDG that we target is partnerships for the goals. And nutrition outcomes span across our strategic objectives 1, 2, and 3, and then supporting national governments actively across SDG 2 overall, but specifically to nutrition outcomes as well to achieve their national development goals. However, so I'm not coming in as the nutrition expert here. I actually work as an innovative finance consultant within the World Food Programme, and I lead the program SHECAN, which I have the pleasure to present to you today. WFP sees innovative finance as an enabler to our mandate, and we recently approved our first innovative finance strategy, which will guide our interventions and our support towards programmatic interventions such as nutrition, climate and resilience, and gender. In a nutshell, so I will start briefly presenting SHECAN overall and how this is related to nutrition or nutrition-sensitive investments. SHECAN is a blended finance initiative which builds on existing WFP programming in the countries where we are active. WFP is active in 120 countries. SHECAN is currently active in 5, so we still have room to go there. But what it is really like leveraging the interventions and the contact that we have with smallholder farmers in these countries to then expand it to the local financial system, given that oftentimes rural livelihoods participants of ours do not have access to adequate financing, maybe working capital for input financing or others for drip irrigations, etc., to grow their yield and actually expand their production. So what we do there is, in essence, we work twofold. We operate the technical assistance arm that you see here, which is our donor funding. And we work directly with the microfinance institutions, so the local financial systems, to develop new products that are informed by what we hear from the target populations that we serve and help them in digitizing their processes. And on the other hand, this TA directly goes to smallholder farmers and micro entrepreneurs as well, in the form of capacity building, digitization, and capacity strengthening regarding gender as well. So all of these activities really come from the de-risking side and offsetting of cost side. The second part of the model then focuses on acting as an investment facilitator, the role that WFP cannot and is not necessarily inclined to take or cannot take by mandate, is that basically investment capital in the form of loan or portfolio guarantees would be directed directly to the MFIs that we already work with. And there we've been working with crowd lending platforms, with more and more we strive to work with development finance institutions, all of you here present today, and other philanthropic investors to basically channel funds to the MFIs and the credit line or the SHICAN-enabled loan product, where we know sort of those two worlds will come together. We're currently active, as mentioned, in quite a few countries and expanding globally. It sounds like, or it looks like, a quite eclectic mix of countries. This is because it's always driven by country office demand. So we don't have like a geographical strategy where to go. We always make sure that it's actually needs-based and the country offices do want to implement this program. And in a nutshell, it's really an ecosystem enabler for inclusive finance across all those geographies. So far, we've reached 58,000 people with inclusive finance, and 78% of them are women. And thankfully, all of this work of acting as the glue in the ecosystem and support agency has resulted in a 0.1 default rate across all the countries that we're operating in. On that backdrop, now looking a bit deeper into the Cameroon pilot that we are currently setting up or have designed, where all of this can be linked to or is linked to climate sensitive investments. A quick word on the Cameroon country context on 3 dimensions, the first one being nutrition, second financial inclusion, and third agriculture. On nutrition, Cameroon is one of the countries also that is faced by the triple burden of malnutrition, seeing stunting, anemia, and overweight in the population. On financial inclusion, actually less than a quarter of adults own a bank account with a formal financial institution. However, the government has released recently a national inclusion finance strategy where they target to get this number to 65%. So clear commitment from the government. And thirdly, a big proportion, around about half of the employed adult population, is active in agriculture. And what we see there is many smallholder farmers as well. So less large agri players there. In terms of what the WFP country office does there, they have adapted their programming to focus on these areas with resilient and gender plus nutrition sensitive food systems. You see some of the interventions listed here on the left-hand side. And one program to highlight as well, which is currently being implemented in collaboration with the government of Cameroon as well as the World Bank, is called Emergency Project to Combat the Food Crisis in Cameroon, or in French, PULCA. And there actually the clear targets of nutrition, livelihoods, and actually school feeding are underlined. And this was the entry point for SHICAN as well, because WFP basically supports schools in Cameroon by now, as of 2024, in 4 different regions with a voucher system, so that the schools can source nutritious foods from equally the cooperatives that WFP supports via their smallholder farmer agricultural activities. And currently this is happening with 61 farmer cooperatives. So basically sorry, go ahead, Terry.
1 minute.
Yeah, connecting the cooperatives with the schools. However, oftentimes the cooperatives face a working capital financing issue. So they get the orders, but they cannot plant the nutritious pulses, legumes and crops because of a financing issue. And this was the entry point for SHICAN. You would see here the model, but basically if you follow me from the left-hand side, the donor money through WFP Cameroon, as per the model before, goes to the schools. The schools then place the orders with the cooperatives. The cooperatives under SHICAN will have received the capacity strengthening and receive the working capital from the financial service provider that we have been working with. A strong component that we're exploring there is actually invoice financing via mobile payment providers. So to really also address the speed at which this working capital could be deployed. And to finish off, the engagement opportunities for private development banks in such a model would basically be the one that we saw earlier in the Shiken model, to directly finance the financial service providers that we work with direct lending. So either liquidity, or oftentimes we see it's actually more of a de-risking element that would be required. The upside of being engaged in such a system is that it's basically pre-identified investment opportunities that are nutrition sensitive, and it's aligned with the national government strategies as well as WFP's operations, and all of this is backed up then by the nutrition outcomes the WFP in country office would follow and record through their M&E systems. Thank you. That was all.
Thanks a lot, and thank you, Nora Praher, and thank you, Dr. Bhavani, for your presentation, and especially for the presentation of the structure of the project, where we can see what could be the role of a national public development bank in a nutrition project, and what kind of financial support they could need. That would lead us, Yue, to our next poll question.
Thank you. Here we come. Now we want to know more about your needs. Please go for the choices.
So what additional resources would a PDB need to implement a nutrition-sensitive investment? And just after this presentation, we will have a presentation from Marie Dalimont. You will pronounce your name better than I do, sorry, from R4D.
Thank you, Thierry. Can you confirm, please? You can see the slides?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you for being ready. Yue, how are we in the answers to the second question?
Yes, we will just wait for 10 more seconds. We can see the finance problem is always the biggest challenge, maybe.
Yes, sure.
So it allowed us from the platform to understand better the needs of our members when it comes to nutrition sensitive projects. So we have that the financial support is the most important problem when it comes to implement the nutrition sensitive investments. But we also have enough participation of the other answers. So, okay, thank you very much. And now we give the floor to our colleague, Marie Dalmont. Marie, over to you.
Thank you very much for having me. Marie Dalimont en français and Mary Delamonte in English. So whichever language, thank you very much. I'm from Results for Development, a program officer. And now that we've heard, and thank you to the previous presenters on some case studies, we're going to zoom back out to look at more broadly, how can agriculture investments integrate nutrition more explicitly within program design and investments. And we're going to be using an example today, the nutrition policy marker that's used by the OECD, and that's been refined and adapted by a set of nutrition donors through the Scaling Up Nutrition Donor Network. If you're not familiar so much with Scaling Up Nutrition, it's a network of 66 countries that are committed to nutrition, also have a thriving donor network, business network, civil society network. Many of you might be part of it, but also available to you if that's of interest, and also UN network. So now looking at the global burden of nutrition, it's still huge. Almost 150 million children are stunted. 45 million children suffer from wasting, childhood wasting. 1 in 3 women are anemic. Too many children are born with low birth weight, and the issue of overweight and obesity is scaling up. And so when we think about and zoom out the issue of nutrition more broadly across countries, it's very clear food security is important, but it's not enough to address the issue of nutrient deficiencies that impact so many lives across the board. And recently, the World Bank issued the new investment framework for nutrition. So here it's looking at how to address this huge burden. What is the impact of scaling up high impact nutrition interventions? Running some economic modeling that show now that every $1 invested in nutrition has a return on investment of $23 back through economic productivity. And the cost of inaction is also huge. So there's a strong social economic rationale for why investing in nutrition is important. And so many countries around the world have committed to this as part of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I'll also say that the investment framework, it requires action across all sectors, and especially as this conversation today, looking specifically at the agriculture sector, how can investments in agriculture and food systems be optimized to improve nutrition? So here we're thinking about just that. How can agriculture investments be designed to elevate nutrition? And this can be done by making them explicit to include nutrition and healthy diet activities, objectives, and indicators. Here, we're thinking about agricultural production, irrigation, livestock and aquaculture production, large-scale food fortification, food safety, market access, and others, and how they can be strategically leveraged. And so it's very helpful. We had two such clear examples presented to us today in India and the Shikan program as well, and thinking about how could these programs be used to elevate and add nutrition components. And here on this slide, there are a few examples of how to do this explicitly. So one, adding a nutrition component at the community level, so providing nutrition education and home gardening to promote the consumption of safe and nutritious foods. The second is to increase production of nutritious foods in the market year-round, addressing issues of seasonality that occur, and not only for staple crops, but making sure that markets have availability and people have access to a full range of colorful fruits and vegetables and proteins in addition to staple foods. Third, through the promotion of food fortification and biofortification, and then finally through value chain investments, including cold chain, making sure that items are preserved, nutrients are preserved through processing and packaging. And the thing is that there's no prescription or prescribed way of how do we improve nutrition in a specific program, because it is highly dependent on the context, the geography, the climate affectedness. Also, what are the nutrient gaps in a particular community, and what are the factors that impact what's available in a market that's closest, plus also what ends up on the food plate. So, it's when we come to it at the end of the day, it's about thinking of how to make nutrition explicit as a first start within financing. So we have this last bullet on what is nutrition sensitive financing, and it's thinking about how agriculture investments can be made with the explicit intent to improve nutrition outcomes for women and children by adding an objective or a diet and looking at what is the existing results framework and platform and how to boost nutrition through the opportunities that are there, remaining as cost effective as possible. And we just saw one of the biggest needs across this, the participants here, is on financing for nutrition. Well, if we're looking at how do we leverage existing investments and add nutrition components, then hopefully that's the step along the way. So we'll switch over now to how to identify those opportunities using this example, the nutrition policy marker. And what is this policy marker? So it is a voluntary qualitative tool that donors use when reporting to the OECD creditor reporting system database. So this is the database where donors report all disbursements across sectors to the OECD. It's a public database. You can download the data from any or all donors. And it's used across sectors, and it tags or identify investments that have a nutrition objective and can track it. And so the table below, you could see the score. It's a tool with 3-point scoring. So it gets investments get a score 2 if nutrition is the principal objective of the investment and it's fundamental to its design, or a score 1 if nutrition is an important and deliberate objective, but not the primary reason for undertaking the action. Or a score 0 if the action has been reviewed against the marker, but it's not targeting nutrition in any significant way. And so we'll look at now a couple of examples of these. And this is, there is guidelines that are public, and perhaps we can share with this group also of interest. It'll go through all of the definitions, etc. And why is it important? Just to pause here. So one, I've talked about this, but to actively identify opportunities on how nutrition can be mainstreamed. So looking at programs, and it helps add a process step to think about, okay, can there be a nutrition objective added to this agricultural production program, or how could we do that? And then secondly, it's also used to track investments as well, because if reported on annually by the donors, then you can track progress over time. So it becomes actually a helpful tool in monitoring progress. Okay, so now we'll switch to examples. So the first example here, it's a Feed the Future example in Senegal, ag and wash investment. And this activity supports the government of Senegal's effort to improve the nutritional status of the population by increasing production, marketing, consumption of diversified, healthy, nutritious food products. And on the slide, you could see the objectives. The first objective being to increase the consumption of diversified, healthy, nutritious foods amongst women. So you could see that the objective is very clearly targeted towards improving nutrition and food security across the board. And the sub-objectives here, some of the words are highlighted: high nutrition value, scale up nutrition interventions, and address health and nutrition quality issues. So this program is designed with the explicit intent to improve nutrition. And on this side, it's the same example. It lists, so I won't read them all, but all the nutrition indicators that are built into this investment. So you can see some of them of children receiving a minimum acceptable diet. There's vitamin A rich orange fleshed sweet potatoes. You see fruits and vegetable intake here. And so the score for this program is a score 2. The whole program is, the principal objective is to improve nutrition. It's fundamental in the design. This is very highly targeted. There's a second example. This is moving on to an example on post-earthquake recovery for Haiti. And here the objective is for rapid support of the recovery of agricultural production, primarily as an emergency action, plus long-term structured response to agricultural activities, the diversification of productive ag activities. But they do have, these are just pulling some of the strategic objectives. We see nutritious foods there. We see canteens, school feeding as part of it. And when we look at the indicators that's on this next slide, it includes dietary diversity, it includes local products and consumption, and this is given a score 1. So nutrition is not the primary objective. This is a post-earthquake recovery, agricultural production, but nutrition is an important and deliberate objective of this program. And now finally, the third example, this is transformational, climate smart, and inclusive agriculture in Rwanda. And so this is looking at the transition to socially, environmentally inclusive agri-food systems, inclusive agriculture, value chains, linkage with international markets and economic development. But there are no nutrition objectives. The overall objective here is to consolidate the sustainable agricultural transformation in Rwanda, and foster inclusive food systems, environmental and climate sustainability. But when it's reviewed, all of the program documentation, it's given a score 0 because nutrition is not explicitly there. And so when we go through each of those examples, there's different reasons for each of these in their own light. But when we think of something without a score 0, if we have a system and thinking about PDBs, especially some kind of tool to review, okay, well, especially at program design. Could this investment be more nutrition sensitive? Well, how could we do that? At what cost? What are some of the low-hanging fruit? So it enables a discussion and consideration of how do we build linkages here to what's already being done. And given the such relevance of food security and systems, looking at, well, is this investment addressing some kind of a nutrient gap in the geography, and how important is that to the PDB's mission to be able to do it? So just kind of summarizing overall, we heard that 2/3 of the participants are already adding nutrition to some extent. That was the first poll question. And so I hope for the other third, nutrition kind of becomes elevated to some extent. It has such a huge social and economic impact. And there are very practical ways agricultural investments can be made more nutrition sensitive. And doing so will help countries achieve their SDG targets and also make their agricultural investments stronger in that way. So we presented the tool as an example. It's currently being used by donors to identify mainstream nutrition within ag and other sectors and also track progress. But the reason for presenting it is also to hear back from the audience and hear how can PDBs, public development banks, consider such a tool, not necessarily copying and pasting the same thing, but thinking about ways to integrate this as a process within your own investment making design in looking at some scoring for nutrition, or is there a sample set of indicators that can be used and adopted as programs are being developed and designed. So with that, I'll say thank you very much and pass it over to Thierry. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mary. And indeed, a score could be very useful in a PDB to start a debate on how could we improve this score on nutrition, and how could we improve our strategy, a nutrition strategy. So we will shortly start our question and answer. So please don't hesitate to start to raise a question in the chat. And just before the question and answer, we will have some lessons learned by a study conducted by GRET with Adrien Trouvadis. Mohamed Ali, you wanted to just, as a moderator of the chat, to say a word before Adrien?
Exactly. We do have 3 questions, one answered by Nora and Jean Sebastian, and 2 other non-answered. Over to you.
Yeah, let's see the question after Adrien's presentation. Thank you. Adrien, please. You are muted.
Hello, everyone, and best wishes for this new year. Thank you for the invitation. I wanted to just expose to you some great learnings from Nutrition Sensitive Agriculture Project. So just a quick first slide on what is GRET. That is NGO, international NGO based in Paris, working on different area of expertise, and one of them is food systems, and another one is nutrition and health. That are the 2 main ones that are interested us today, with almost 30 countries, and we implement projects as well as we do some studies and expertise really quickly, mainly West Africa and Southeast Asia. So I just want to talk about the great experience on nutrition sensitive agriculture. It has been more than 20 years now that we implement nutrition sensitive agriculture project, and one of the main one that structured even until now our intervention and principles on nutrition sensitive agriculture is the program Azanao. We have implemented already 2 phases, 3 years each. And now we are starting the 3rd one and the last one. So for additional 3 years, really quickly on this program, and I put the website link if you want to learn more about this program. The main objective is to improve food and nutrition security through reinforcing the linkages between agriculture and nutrition while contributing to a favorable food environment. towards sustainable and safe food systems. It's a worldwide program with 8 countries integrated: Senegal, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mauritania, and Guinea in West Africa, Madagascar and Haiti, and Cambodia for Southeast Asia. So as I explained before, we have started the phase 3, and the objective is to reinforce the action and influence capacities of food systems stakeholders towards this sustainable and safe system. I tried really to summarize the different learnings that we learned from the 2 first phases, and I tried to formulate them, even if I think it's not really perfect. In a way, it can be understandable and useful for simple indicators or simple scoring for the public banks. So 8 main recommendations and learnings. For a project to be nutrition sensitive, and especially for agriculture project to be nutrition sensitive, it's important that it's based on a holistic diagnosis to understand better the nutrition problematics and link to the existing food systems. So it's really important that the different projects are based on food system approach with a holistic and systemic approach. Another one is integrating nutrition and food diversification objectives, especially in agriculture projects. For the value chain, it's better that the project supports local high nutritive value chain for production, for quality, markets, and also structuration. Another one is the project that promotes territorial food systems, supporting and protecting family farming, agroecology, and local high nutritive value chains are more nutrition sensitive. We can expect a better impact on nutrition. Another one is the long-term objectives, especially for capacities reinforcement. That is really important in that kind of project if we want to achieve nutrition objectives, with a complementarity in terms of activities, with trainings, awarenesses, and advisory participative approach, especially for agriculture and agriculture stakeholders, farmers, and also for the food practices for the consumers. It's also important that in the support and advisory mechanism to farmers, that it integrates nutrition and care for especially women and young children that are the most vulnerable to nutrition problem. It's also important that one project integrates a gender approach, especially for the economic autonomy of the women. And the last one that is not easy to evaluate, but can be a question to have in mind when selecting the project. The project should promote food environment, allowing equitable and sustainable access for consumers to diverse and safe food products. So these are the main 8 learnings that we have from our experience, and maybe it can inspire some simple tool like a checklist. Yes, that's a checklist that can be useful for the PDB to evaluate every project and every investment. Just small last recommendations to take away. It's important that even if this tool exists and is used by the PDB, it's important that its interpretation is really anchored on the ground. It means that local staff or local partners should be included in the interpretation of the score by adding critical qualitative information in order to avoid mistakes. Another one is every project targeting FNS should integrate nutrition objectives with specific indicators. Another one is nutrition sensitive projects or investment should be combined also to specific nutrition project investments because both together can really have a significant impact on nutrition. And the last one is now that we have on the food system approach that is the most suitable to really tackle the nutrition problems. every part of the food system should be targeted in synergies toward this same objective of sustainably improve food and nutrition security. So just for these parts, it means actions on supply chain, food environment, but also on consumers' behaviors.
Thanks a lot, Adrien. Thanks a lot, and many thanks to every speaker who helped us to brainstorm on what could be our next steps and how we could continue the discussion around building guidelines based on the lessons learned from studies of and from the architecture of a project also, and from the experience of some PDBs. We open the floor to questions. If we have in the audience some public development banks who would like to share their experience, they are more than welcome. Aurore, you wanted also maybe to have a comment?
No specific comment, but we would be interested in knowing if what was proposed by Adrian regarding having an assessment grid could be of interest for PDBs and to co-build this initiative of this grid. Thank you.
Mohamed Ali, about the questions that were in the chat, I think that there were not that many.
Okay, I have two questions, Terry. The first one from Alberta Nyaku for Dr. Bhavani. What are examples of nutrition intervention in the NABARD projects across the 226 projects? If Dr. Bhavani stay with us and can answer the question.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Technology restored. See, the interventions that are directly related to nutrition and food security. Number one, we have encouraged a lot of farmers in shifting to millet cultivation. Okay. Millet cultivation is millets are, as all of us understand, millets are best suited for dryland conditions, and therefore, and they're also low input demanding crops. That is one. Second thing is, as a part of our projects, an intervention that we always encourage in not only in these 226 projects but also across. We almost have 3,000 projects, such projects, wherein we support for kitchen gardening, okay, for fruits and vegetables supplied throughout the year. The second part is there are certain models, farming models, which allow cultivation of crops throughout the year in a cyclical manner, in a sequential manner, I should say. Okay. The fourth one is on the encouraging the farmers or supporting the farmers. In one of my earliest slides, I have talked about tribal development, which is sustainable livelihoods for tribals, wherein we have supported the farmers in raising orchards with intercrops as vegetables. So these are some of the interventions that we have undertaken in our projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhavani. Still have one, Thierry, from Alberta Nyako as well for Nora Praher. What is the women's nutrition intervention component of the SHICAN project? And I would like to thank Jean-Sébastien Kouassi and Nora Praher for the answer on the Q&A question. Thank you. Over to you, Nora.
And I'm just wondering if we don't have a problem in the chat, and I'm not sure that attendees can raise question. But we will check that. Over to you, Nora.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually was wondering the same because I'd responded to Alberta at the time. So just to reiterate here, the gender component actually comes from A to Z of program design. So the targeting that we apply, the gender sensitization, both at individual and community level. We also work with the financial service providers to design actually gender responsive lending products, targeting the barriers that particularly women face in accessing these lending products, and also in the M&E framework. And then on the nutrition component, here we work with cooperatives, so very much along the lines what Adrian shared from GRED, focusing on specific value chains that are the most nutritive, and connecting them to the schools that WFP already supports to increase the amount of nutritious food, school meals in the schools. So this is the two components and how they come together in Cameroon.
Thank you. And I'm very sorry, I have the impression that we restricted, but it was not voluntary, the participation of the attendees to. So
The Q&A is working, Thierry. So I see question from answered from Juan Espinoza, Alessandra. She confirmed that the
Okay.
Q&A is working. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see it. Okay, sorry. So are there other possible participation? We can still open the floor for 5 minutes question if you want.
There is one interesting in the Q&A already answered by Nora, but we can ask again for the whole participant. Is there any request for PDB to be part of the WFP, B Finance, and what are their plans for Latin America?
Thank you, Mohammed. Yeah, so there's no strict requirements per se. Like the partners that we're looking for are obviously aligned to the impact objectives that we intend to achieve. So the financing should be very intentional to increasing the access to the SHICAN-enabled lending products. So it would be financing either concessional or portfolio guaranteed, structured in a way that more of this lending product will be available on the market. That's just overall the type of partners we look for. We don't intervene in the actual structuring, as this is then a contract or like the investment between the PDB and the financial service provider in that sense. And then our plans for LATAM. So we have a pilot in Peru already that we will continue this year. We are just about to launch in Ecuador as well, and we are in early conversations with Colombia. So looking at a potential launch in 2026. And WFP overall has like a regional bureau in Panama and country offices across LATAM. So if there's any interest in being connected to either of those, I'm happy with colleagues to facilitate. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a last question in the audience?
Let me check.
Also raise your hand.
So if not, please send us your comments also by email. We are wondering if we will continue to organize maybe a second webinar later during this year on nutrition, and maybe on the recommendation highlighted by the speakers, how to improve a simple score that a PDB could use, or to build guidelines and a list of recommendation when a project manager is starting to build a project in agriculture. To have just a checklist, so we could try to build this kind of tool and share it with you. We will share with you all the presentation also shortly. It will be available on our website. Our next meeting will be during the last week of January on agroecology and tools that could help PDB to improve its taxonomy for agroecology. Mohamed Ali, do you want to say a word on the next webinar?
Yeah, we'll organize the next webinar on agroecology in partnership with Agroecology Coalition in FAO. We will try to organize this webinar in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish, and we look forward to your participation. We will try during this webinar to present the available tools in the market that PDB can use to assess the transition to agroecology in the bank operation. Over. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks a lot. Yes.
Sorry. Thank you everyone for coming. Now we want to have launch a satisfaction survey to see whether you have any recommendations for the future and what would you like to see to have another topic to discuss with us. So here it comes. Our last question. It's super short, just 3 questions. Please take a moment to answer the question.
Thank you, Yue. Do not hesitate to answer to the survey or to contact us directly. Aurore, would you like a word of conclusion, or would any of the speaker would like to have a word of conclusion before we close?
No, thanks a lot, Thierry, for the Agri-PDB platform for organizing the webinar and for attending all of you.
Likewise, thanks a lot for organizing.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting us.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavani, for participating so late according to the timeline in India. It's already late for you.
Not an issue.
So many thanks, everybody. And so see you soon at the end of January for our next webinar. Is the survey over?
Maybe you can
Yes.
close this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.